Well, hey, thanks for checking in to another episode of Triple Play. And don't forget to like, subscribe. And also, we want to thank our sponsor, Brookes Bible College. If you're looking for a Bible college, please consider Brookes Bible College. They're awesome. They do degrees in both biblical education and biblical counseling. So you can be a pastor, missionary, or do counseling. They're in the Midwest here, and can't speak enough about them. So consider Brookes Bible College. Check them out. Let them know that you heard about them from Triple Play podcast. That way they know that they're being heard and seen. And but we like Brookes Bible College. You know who we have in common that goes to Brookes?
Who's that?
Bria.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
She is a student at Brookes Bible College. So you know who else graduated from Brookes Bible College from church?
It's a quiz for you.
Yeah, just a quiz. See if you know. While we're talking,
you gotta give me a hint.
If I give you a hint, it's going to be a big one. It's Marty Zide.
Oh, okay.
Marty Zide.
I think we knew that, yeah.
Yeah, we've had him on here a couple times dealing with, he did the Hanukkah recently.
Yeah.
So, but he's from Brookes. So, look, man, we know Brookes is a great Bible college. We just talked about one of our great guests and a good friend of ours. So, check out Brookes Bible College. That said,
who do we have today?
Today, we have a good friend of mine from church, Jerod Broadbooks. He has an interesting story, though, that recently happened. And so we were talking, and actually, you know what's kind of funny is I was already thinking I need to get him probably on the podcast to talk about this. And then your dad came up and said, you need to get my son on the podcast. And I'm like, yeah. I was already thinking that vein. That was really funny.
Yeah.
So
you got a cool little story to talk about.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
This is great.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about you. I know about you, but tell everybody a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? Where'd you go to the St. Louis question? Where'd you go to high school? And a little bit about your testimony, and we'll get into your story from there.
Cool. So, as Josh said, I'm Jerod Broadbooks. Glad to be on here. It's cool. I've never been really in a setting like this, so this is kind of fun.
You're a musician, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just like the podcast interview type situation.
All the attention's on you, kind of.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, especially with like talking, it's weird because I'm a teacher, and I'll get into that in just a bit. But I talk in front of kids all the time, and it's like walking. I don't even get nervous or anything like that. But then you put yourself in front of adults, public speaking in that way, and it's like, I'm a little nervous. So this is a little bit out of my element, but
we won't judge you.
Yeah,
we'll be like little kids.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, Josh is pretty immature, right?
We'll just laugh.
Yeah.
My wife is laughing as she's listening to this right now and agreeing.
Yeah. So anyway, classic St. Louis question: where did I go to high school? So I went to Eureka High School. So I'm actually from the Wildwood area, which is actually where we all go to church, New Community Church. Grew up about a mile from there. Went to New Community Church since I was like 8 years old. I think 2005 my family started going, so been going there for a while. But grew up Christian, grew up in a really solid Christian home. I was actually homeschooled for the first what would that, like up until high school. So the first 9-10 years of my education was homeschooled, and then went to Eureka High School after that. And then, I was involved in various activities, namely running, which is probably what we're going to be talking a lot about. So I got into cross country and track freshman year of high school. Really just kind of clicked with me. It was funny. It was one of those things where I didn't actually necessarily intend to get into it. When I was in middle school in 6th grade, I ran like a pretty decent mile. I ran like 5:30 or something. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then after I ran that, I was like, I don't really know if I want to run. And so I got into like weightlifting because that's what my brothers were in at that time. If you know my brother Justin, he's a really big power lifter. He actually went to Lindenwood on an Olympic weightlifting scholarship. So that was kind of the thing to do at that point, was just lift and get big. And I actually was planning on going out for football. And so, but I had never played a down football in my life. It was just like, oh yeah, I was going to join the team and, do that because it was cool or whatever. And both my brothers at that point were playing. But my dad, who, I think fathers have this way of kind of like, they know you a lot better than you think you know yourself a lot of times. And so he was like, no, you're not doing football. You're going to be a runner. Like, you're pretty fast. Like, distance running's your thing. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. He's like, no, you're going to do that. I was like, okay. And it really wasn't. I'm making it sound worse than it was. It really wasn't like him like imposing this thing on me. It was kind of a gentle nudge, like, hey, I think this is what you'd be better at. And then I ended up going to a couple summer practices. So the summer before my freshman year of high school at Eureka there, and just immediately fell in love with the sport, and just really clicked with it. And I was hooked pretty much from that initial summer, and then I ran all the way through high school, and then I ended up going to college at Lindenwood University, ran track and cross country there, and then I also got a teaching degree there, and I'm a music teacher in the Francis Howell School District. I'm a band director at Barnwell Middle School. Yeah. So yeah, that's.
And you still help out with running there.
Yeah. So mate. Well, so I was coaching for about 3 years there. So from like spring of 2021 up until just recently, and I actually just stepped down from that role just because, and I'll probably get into this a little bit. It was just kind of a lot was going on in my life, and so I actually just cut that out recently. So
gotcha.
Okay. But, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So you said you ran 5 minute, 30 minute, or 5 minute, 30-second mile.
Yeah, in sixth grade.
Sixth grade. I remember sixth grade. I wasn't that fast. I ran maybe around 6, but I mean, I imagine the way I grew up running, climbing trees, that you obviously did more than I did because you ran better. Like, talk about your childhood. Like, how is that because of homeschool? You're able to be outside, or is that just because you have brothers, or like it seemed like you're very active to just
definitely. I mean. And this is where I almost get sad kind of seeing the current generation growing up, because when I was a kid, and this wasn't that long ago, I'm 26, so we're talking like, early 2000s. Like, the thing you did was you went outside and you played with the neighborhood kids. Like, everyone did that all day, every day. It was like, as soon as you got off school, I being homeschooled, I always waited for 4:00 when the kids got home, and as soon as they got off the bus, it was like, we were playing cops and robbers, or, dodgeball or whatever, so that was a lot of it, just being active, being out in the neighborhood. And, I played soccer in elementary and middle school. But it was more recreational. It wasn't anything I took serious. I wasn't on any club teams or anything like that. It was like a CYC, like St. Alban team, that kind of thing. But,
gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, I've always been active, and I definitely think that the homeschooling probably played a role in that, just because, a lot of times when you're homeschooled, especially once you get to a certain age, you're kind of self-sufficient. Your mom gives you the lesson for the day, and then you kind of work on it independently as she's kind of floating around to help the other kids. Because I have 2 brothers and one younger sister, 2 older brothers, 1 younger sister. So we were all homeschooled at the same time. And so, there's a lot of room for, if you know what you're doing, you can get your schoolwork done by, late morning, early afternoon, and then you got the rest of the day to kind of do whatever. So, especially once I got closer to high school, a lot of that time was spent, like I said, working out. I went to the Wildwood Y. I worked out there. So sometimes, I'd just go there and play basketball. Sometimes I'd lift. Sometimes kind of whatever I was feeling at the time. But yeah, just definitely kind of always had that bent towards being really active and always wanted to do something.
So you're also creative. I mean, you mentioned you're a band teacher, and one of the things you do at our church is you play an instrument, right?
Right.
So how did that develop? I mean, because you have this other passion. You got a passion of running, and now you also, when did that start developing in the music realm? Because you're very, very talented. I mean, you probably don't know this, but this guy actually played guitar for
30 Seconds to Mars.
That's right.
So I can get into that in just a little bit, but so I started playing guitar when I was in like 6th grade. It was one of those things where we got a guitar for Christmas, just like a family gift for me and my brothers. And then I was kind of just the one who really, gravitated towards it and kind of latched onto it. My other brothers, Jeremy and Justin, they played a little bit, and I think they could still probably play, but I was kind of the one who really was like, oh, this is cool, and kind of got really into it. So And that was kind of part of the whole homeschooling thing. It was either I was working out or I was, playing guitar in my free time. So
I was figuring that when you said I was at the gym a lot, I was like, I don't hear the guitar, but I have to figure that you, I mean, to be as good as you are and then master your craft that way.
Yeah.
At your age, you had to start young because you're, I mean, I've been around a lot of good players in my life and you're up there.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And so, yeah, I mean, from there, just being homeschooled, kind of just self-teaching myself guitar. And when I say self-teaching, it was, I grew up in the age of the internet. So I don't think anyone's really self-taught anymore. You go on YouTube and you got all these crazy detailed, video tutorials, and you got guitar tabs and stuff like that. But that's kind of how I started. And then I did that all through high school. And, I took some music classes and stuff like that. But then going into college, it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, well, I really like music, and my mom was a teacher, and so that was something that kind of always resonated with me. It was just like helping the next generation, and I like kids, and so it kind of all just clicked. It was like, okay, be a teacher, and then I really like music teacher, cool, and then I was also kind of your point earlier, because I was so interested in like running and athletics, I was like, well, if I become a teacher, maybe somewhere down the line I can work it out to where I'm coaching as well. And so that's actually what I did for a few years. There was, the music teacher and then the coach as well. So
played both your passions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had another guy in here who's an educator, and he was a help me out here, as a biologist.
I don't know where you're going with this.
Who was the teacher we just had on here last week that was a biologist? He was I'm trying to think what kind of biology he was.
Last week, since
not microbiology. No, not micro. It's where you're looking at really, really small particles. What is that called? I should know this. Like I am drawing a complete blank, and I know I'm not saying it right. So he's not a micropilot, a molecule.
Gotcha.
That's right. He was a molecular biologist, and but my point of that was he was able to put his passions together. He wanted to be able to teach, and yet he wanted to be outdoors, and he's teaching and he's outdoors. And he's doing everything he loves.
Joel Brown.
Yeah, that was, and that kind of reminded me of what you just said. Being able to combine all these passions together. I can do music, I can do the coaching and the running, and mesh those through the educational world, which is cool. So,
running. How have you gotten better at running over the years? How does improvement sought in that arena?
So, my running story, especially post college, isn't really exactly linear, is how I would put it. So, like I said, I went to Lindenwood, ran cross country and track there.
Were you super fast there? How did you? I mean, when you say you went to Eureka and you went to Lindenwood, obviously you were good enough to get a scholarship. Right. How did you do your senior year of Eureka? Were you like a top runner in the state?
So here's how I would explain it. I was probably like an above average varsity runner, if that makes sense, Eureka. So good enough to where I could go to a Division II school and, get a little bit of scholarship money, but I wasn't like winning state or anything like that.
Okay.
So for a reference, in 5K, I had in high school, my 5K PR was 16:27. For cross country, and then I had PR personal record, the common running lingo. 800 I ran 159, and then the mile I ran like 434. So most normal people, if they heard times like that, they'd be like, wow, that's pretty fast. But as far as like collegiate times and people who are kind of like top prospects, I really wasn't there. I was more kind of, like I said, an above average, I would say, varsity runner in high school. But then, like you said, I was able to go to Lindenwood and run there, and I actually did improve quite a bit. And my senior year there at Lindenwood, I was a Division II All-American in the mile. I ran like 409 my senior year. So going from 434 in high school down to 409 in college. So yeah, quite a bit of improvement there, but still not like anything where I would be like, oh, that's insane, or like professional level, I guess, because a lot of guys, especially in Division I, if you're running the mile, a lot of them break 4 in the mile nowadays. And, 5K, you got to be, probably 13:30 or better. And I was like a 14:40 guy. So again, I was good, but I wasn't like really, really good or anything like that. So, but after college, this is when it gets kind of weird. So when I graduated college, I immediately took like 10 months off from running. And honestly, during probably the middle of that period, I really didn't have any plan to get back into running. I actually got into weightlifting.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You were going to the gym with your brothers and starting to bodybuild again.
Yeah.
And you were muscling up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did that for almost a year. So that would have been like May 2019 when I stopped competing for track and cross country till like March of 2020. And we all know what happened in March of 2020, COVID. So what happened with that was basically everything shut down, and at that time, March 2020, like no one knew what was going to happen, right? We all thought it was going to be a 2-3 week thing and then everything was going to be back to normal, or at least that's what I thought,
What we were told.
Yeah, that's what we were told.
Now we know what we're told is not true.
Yeah. But, so I was like, okay, well, gym shuts down. I didn't have a gym at home or anything. So I was like, well, I'll just go back to running because that's just kind of what's natural, right? And for running, you don't need a gym. You just go out and run on this.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I got back into that, and then, 2 to 3 weeks turned into 2 to 3 months, turned into 6 months. And then by that point, I'd just been running consistently and the gyms were still closed. So I didn't really have a reason to get back into the gym, or I really couldn't. So then, I kind of got back into running and was like, maybe I'll, kind of give this another go. And at that point, I was just kind of doing my own training, not really training for anything specifically, just kind of staying in shape and just seeing maybe if I could like get a little bit faster than I was in college, but it wasn't super structured. It was kind of just like, just go run some miles, stay in shape, and then if I happen to get maybe enter into a race and get a good time, then that's just kind of icing on the cake, that kind of thing. And so it was basically like that until probably about I would say the end of 2022, so maybe about a 2-year period. And I actually did take another small break from running in there. Let me think. It'd probably be like mid to end of 2022. I took another maybe 4 to 5 month break from running just because life got busy. I actually got married during that point in my life. So, I got a new job. So that's kind of when I started coaching. So things were kind of just a lot of different things were happening. So, but then I started to get more serious about running towards the end of that year and just start training again and just kind of I kind of saw that, with being married and like all of the things that come with that, kids, more responsibility, things like that. I was like, well, I can't do this forever. So I figured that, if I'm going to try to do something with this, I might as well do it now, that kind of thing. So I ended up signing up for a 5K this would have been March of 2023. So maybe about 3 to 4 months in after I'd kind of decided to train a little bit harder. And then I went out, and this was a 5K that on the track at WashU. One of the things that's interesting about running is, with a sport like baseball, you couldn't just like enter into a baseball game and just be like, hey, I'm here, and then just show up on this team. You got to be like,
what's my number?
Yeah, you got to be like in that organization, whatever governing body it is, whether it's the minors, majors, whatever. But running, it's kind of like, you can enter into races like unattached is what they call. So this was actually a college race, and I entered in unattached, meaning I wasn't associated with the university. I was just there to run. And so I did that, and then I ended up running like my personal best in that 5K at that meet, which was like 14:36, which was only a few seconds faster than college. But I was like, oh, that was cool. I only trained, for like 3-4 months. And then I was still able to run faster than my college time. So maybe I have more left in the tank than I really thought I did. So then at that point, after I ran that personal best in the 5K, I was kind of like, well, what's like the one thing I haven't done in my running career? So I kind of thought about it. I'd done a half marathon, I'd run collegiately, 10K, 5K, 8K, all the different distances. So I was like, well, the one thing I really haven't done is marathon. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to go for a marathon. But I didn't want to just like finish the marathon. A lot of people just do a marathon just to like complete the distance. But I figured because I had enough of a running background to where, just completing the distance for me wouldn't have been as much of like an accomplishment as maybe someone who had less of a running background. So I was like, I really want to go for it and just kind of see what I can do. So I would say probably around April or May, again, after I'd run that 5K, I decided, you know what, I'm going to really go for this and see if I can run the Olympic trials qualifying standard in the marathon, which what that means is basically I was shooting for 2 hours and 18 minutes in the marathon, which if I ran that time, that would allow me to get into the U.S. Olympic trials marathon, which is February of 2024. So that was kind of my goal during that period. And long story short, I trained basically from April 2023 to December 2023, about an 8-month block, and ended up running pretty significantly faster than the 2:18. I ran 2:14:59 in the marathon for my first ever marathon. It was called the California International Marathon. And
you also had to fly to get there too, so it isn't like it was a local one. You had to fly, so you got that involved there too, which is interesting.
Yeah. So I ended up going there, and I got 7th in the race, and there were about 10,000 runners in the race, qualified for the Olympic trials. So
that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, in the week leading up to it, had a lot of tumultuous stuff, to say the least. Yeah.
So, kind of to go off that, I mean, I almost didn't even go to the race because the Monday before, so we found out the Monday before that, but it was the Tuesday where everything actually happened. My wife had what is called an ectopic pregnancy, which is essentially the baby is fertilized inside the fallopian tube instead of the uterus. And if it grows to a certain size, what ends up happening is it ruptures the fallopian tube and then kills the mother and kills the baby. So really the only way to deal with it is to just remove the baby. So that happened the Tuesday before I was supposed to do this race, and the race was on Sunday. So there was part of me where I didn't even want to go because not only was I struggling emotionally, but my wife was struggling emotionally a lot and physically as well. So I kind of wanted to be there for her, but she said no. I really want you to go. I think this is, something that you've really worked hard on. So I would hate it if, even though the terrible circumstances, I would hate it if you didn't get to go and try this out. So, and she also knew that, and I knew this too, but it was actually literally the last race that I could have run to qualify for the Olympic trials. Because the qualifying window closed on December 5th, 2023, and the race was on December 3rd, 2023. So, and there were no other major marathons in that 2-day period. So it was like, this was it. If I don't do it, then it doesn't happen. If I do, maybe it does, that kind of thing. So,
and you did it.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah. So as you were running, I imagine this is all playing in your background. How did that progress? Because I saw you kind of breaking down online a little bit of that race, and along the way there was a struggle too. If I remember right, you kind of had a cramp. So lead us through how that kind of happened and occurred. So
during the race itself, I actually felt really, really good. So the pace that I had to run to get the ultimate goal of 2 hours and 18 minutes was 5:15 per mile. And I actually went out in about 5:10 per mile for the first roughly 5K or so. But then from there, I kind of started hitting under 5:10, 5:05, 5:02, 5:01, that kind of range. And I was just like clicking, just like feeling amazing, like every mile after mile. And I got to about probably about mile 10, and I'm like, man, like I think I can hold this pace, and all I needed was the 5:15, but I was pretty consistently under that 5:10 range for a while. And there was this guy that I was running with. I didn't even know him before at all, and I still really don't know him, but we kind of had this bond in the middle of the race to where, in a marathon, you're running slow enough to where you're not completely anaerobic, you're not completely gassed to where you're like, that kind of thing. It's not a sprint. So, you have a room for a word here or there, with the people, you're running with. So I kind of, said a few words to this guy that I was running with, like, hey man, how are you feeling? That kind of stuff. And so his name was Robert. I ended up talking to him after a race, but I ran with this guy for probably like 20 miles of the marathon. And so we kind of had this bond. But to get to your question about the cramps, I felt pretty much the same as what I described, like in the beginning there, of like, feeling really good, really smooth, probably until about mile 20. And then that's kind of when my body was like, okay, we're in uncharted territory here, never run this far I'd run that far, but never that far at that, intensity. And so I kind of started getting some calf cramps, and it wasn't anything like major. It was more just kind of like every time I would push off my foot, you get that sensation like you're about to get a Charlie horse, but it doesn't fully develop into one. So it's kind of like, if I push really hard, if I step in a weird way, maybe I'll kind of get, a bad one. But thankfully that didn't happen, and I was able to push through those last, 6 miles or so and bring it home.
I was just laughing in my own head, just thinking like a marathon, you're running for like an entire feature length film. Like,
yeah.
Just picture like watching, I don't know what movie, just running the whole time.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Just like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so, how was the mental process of running the race through that? Was there any thought that you were hanging on to, especially given that week? Was there something that you felt like really kind of encouraged you that day, in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the thought of, my wife and really just kind of, because she actually wasn't able to be at the race, and she was really, bummed that she couldn't be there. But because of the surgery she had, she wasn't really able to hardly even get out of bed that whole week. So just kind of having her in my mind, during that whole race was helpful, and just being like, look, dude, like no matter how bad it hurts, you're going to get to that finish line, so that she can see you in February at the trials. So that was kind of what was going through my head.
That's great.
That's awesome. Was there anybody helping you train up to that marathon along the way, or was that all self-done?
It was all self-coached.
He's a homeschooler, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I told you,
I figured you need nobody else to teach him.
Yeah. I figured as much, but there was a lot of people at church that were like that Sunday coming out in the lobby and seeing you as you were running. They were checking your pace and checking to see how you were. It was really.
Have you talked to the Cocos at the church at all? Do you know the Cocos?
Oh yeah.
Two boys that run.
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah. I've talked to him a bit about running.
Tucker's a big runner. I think he goes to Chaminade. I think he's.
Yeah.
I think what if I heard he's unbelievable, but
oh wow.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I've talked to Peter for sure. Yeah, but I haven't talked to him.
Yeah, if it comes to mind, bring it up. I know he would love soaking in whatever you can give him.
I know that it was interesting because you said your passion was kind of reignited a little bit after COVID because you couldn't work out in the gym, and it kind of got you back to running. I am not a big runner. I had actually trained several times to run a marathon, and this is funny, but every time I would train up to do it, a life would throw me a curveball. The first time, my daughter came early, Selah, and so I was going to run the St. Louis one.
Yeah.
And then there was another one I was going to run, and they were all spaced out. It wasn't like I was like the next year. Like I was like, I had a kid, then I gained a little weight, then I lost it again. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going to run. I had a neighbor that was running. So next one I started training up for, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do, a marathon. I hurt my calf
You're not supposed to do marathon.
Yeah. But I mean, I ran the equivalent of one. I've trained several times. I mean, I was running Forest Park with a buddy of mine. We ran, the equivalent. And he was a cross country runner for the University of Wisconsin.
Oh wow.
He came down here and was a postal guy and single, and so I started running with him when. I was back when Amy first got pregnant, so she couldn't move around as much. So I was. running with him, and it was great for my initial weight loss because you're burning a lot of calories when you're running. So I've done it, but I've never been able to actually do a full marathon, like officially, a time one like that. So, but the training for that, it's intense. I mean, when you're going from even like you're running like a 5K or 10K to go to a full marathon, that's a pretty big leap, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Do people? I'm not a runner, so these questions might be stupid, but do you ever run a full marathon when you're training for a marathon, or is it just like you're doing 10, 15, 20, 17, 15?
We did 2 weeks out. When we were training 2 weeks out, we ran right before I had.
So you did too, Jerod?
So I got really close. The longest I did before it was like 24 miles.
Wow.
But some people do, like you said, they'll run the distance before, especially a lot of pro runners, they'll maybe run 26, or there's this running app that I use. It's kind of like Facebook for runners. It's called Strava. You just post all your runs and you can see everyone's training and all that. But there's this guy that I follow and he's doing the same thing I'm doing. He's training for the Olympic trials, but he ran like 28. So yeah, it's definitely not uncommon to do more than the marathon distance or equal to the marathon distance. But I would say also there's just as many pros, elite level runners who don't run the distance before they do it. Because once you get up to anywhere past 20 miles or so, it's all pretty much the same.
I don't know much about. I mean, I know Prefontaine.
Yeah, Prefontaine,
and then David Goggins. Those are like the two names.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Everybody knows Goggins.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So like from what I know.
Well, and I don't ever want to do the Badwater 135 or whatever like you did.
In the desert.
Yeah, I'm good.
You guys are crazy.
I actually have a friend of mine who has I guess I don't know if they're married yet. They were dating. It's been a few years since I've hung out with them, but she had done marathons, and she had done them so far on 5 different continents.
Wow.
So she did one in Africa, and so that was her thing, was to do those. And she would run them on different continents. So she would train to do and
That's
pick
cool.
one every few years out. She was a little bit older than me, but she'd been spacing about every 2 to 3 years. She would do one and do it on a different continent, because you have to save for the travel and obviously training for different types of environment. Yeah, I mean, because some of them were more mountain range types, some were, because she did one like in South America that was more mountain range-ish. She did the one in Africa that was through like the Sahara, like
Sahara.
the like down. Yeah, she was sharing all about it. And
That's cool.
yeah,
What kind of like planning for meals and energy, and like is that something you would research and find the best smell, or is that just something that you over the years have just said, like, if I eat this the day before, I don't cramp up, I'm good?
Yeah, it's more the latter. Just kind of personal experience, what I know my body responds well to, and kind of what'll actually like help me with my training, because there's a lot of things, there's like the day-to-day kind of nutrition, eating a lot of carbs, eating sufficient protein, things like that. But then there's also kind of like, the night before nutrition, which really, in my opinion, should be the same, because if you're used to eating something during your training, you should do the exact same thing before the race,
Mm-hmm.
So
what was your prep like before the race mostly? I mean, when you say if nutrition was similar, did you use the liquid IV that we were talking about earlier for for electrolytes? Did you carry water with you when you're running a marathon on your back?
Like mile 7, I gotta do some goo.
Well, so basically the way the marathon that I went to was set up is they have like different divisions. And so there's like an elite division, there's a seeded division, which is kind of like a sub-elite division, then there's like everyone else. And I was in the everyone else category because I'd never run a marathon, so I didn't have a time to qualify me for the other 2 divisions. And so when I was running, I had to use kind of like the general water / electrolyte aid stations that everyone else was using. So for me, that looked like every 2 miles, someone handing me a plastic cup, and then But that's not really ideal when you're running at that level, because you want to have something that, one, is going to get you more, liquid, because if you take a plastic, 4-ounce plastic cup, half of it ends up on your face anyway. It doesn't end up in your mouth. And then, a lot of times it doesn't even have anything in it. It might just be water. So a lot of the pros, like those guys in like the elite and the sub-elite categories, they had like water bottle service. So they actually, like the day before the race, they give the race officials all of their water bottles that they want placed throughout the course. And they, put something on it. Like maybe you have a white water bottle and you put a pink piece of tape on it so you can see it amongst all the other water bottles. So then when they get to that mile marker, they know, okay, mine's the white with the pink strip on it. So then they grab their water bottle, and then it's more like a Gatorade water bottle where they can squirt it and get a lot more out of it. So ideally I would have had that, but I didn't get that. And so when I go to the trials, I will get that. So hopefully that'll help a little bit.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
That's a nice little perk.
Yeah, no, it'll be good.
Yeah.
Show first servers for your...
Yeah, that's right.
So another, I want to rewind a little bit, because we got into the running part, but your music part and getting to 30 Seconds to Mars, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How did that come about? So obviously you got good enough to be able to do it, but how did that all play out? So
that happened, it would have been the summer of 2018. I think it was July of 2018. So that was actually the summer before my senior year in college. And at the time, I had a summer job just working as a lifeguard. And most of my day was just spent just like sitting there in a chair, bored out of my mind, telling kids to walk instead of run, that kind of thing. But I would always have the radio on in the background, and I would listen to like 105.7 The Point a decent amount, just because I like alternative, rock, that kind of stuff. And there was this radio ad that played, a few times while I was working. It was about, it was, I think they called it like the Guitar God or something like that. And basically what it was is it was an advertisement to send in a video of you playing 30 Seconds to Mars song, because they were coming to St. Louis, and basically whoever sent in the video that the band liked the best, they were going to let you play a song with them on stage. So, I heard that ad one day and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I heard it a couple other times and I was like, you know what, I'll just try it. So I sent in a video, I posted it on YouTube, and long story short, they liked my video, and they had me play with a song with them on stage at the Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. So that was a pretty cool experience. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of people there, probably about 25,000 people there. So
how does that so how do you size that up, like playing on that huge stage compared to like your room? That had to be like a moment where you're like,
yeah, no, it's big. I mean, and I've been in other performance situations. Like I played every week at church, but obviously that's different because it's worship and it's not about you, that kind of thing. But, I was a music major, so every semester we had like a certain number of performances we had to do. So the performance aspect wasn't necessarily nerve-wracking. It was kind of like you said, it was just a much larger scale. Yeah, I mean, it was nerve-wracking, but...
Did you get an A in that semester when they saw that at college?
Yeah, well, my professors thought it was, like, super cool, and I kind of, when you're a guitar player in, like, the music, school of music, I should say, it's like, you're not viewed as like a lower class or anything necessarily, but there's kind of like a certain reputation guitar players have, they're kind of lazy, they want to do guitar tabs, they don't want to do sheet music, that kind of thing. But, after that performance, I think I got a little bit more respect, because they're like, yeah, that was awesome, man, it was super cool. So I was like, okay, but
take it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. How did you get to meet the band and hang out with them a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, I got to meet a couple of the band members. I'll be honest, like the front man, Jerod Leto.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to talk to him before the show. He was kind of off doing his own thing. I don't really know what he was doing, but I got to talk to some of the other lesser known band members, kind of thing.
Best you didn't meet Jerod Leto.
Yeah, he was wearing like this pink dress thing when I was there. It's kind of weird.
A weirdo. If you don't know who Jerod Leto is,
he's a little off.
Yeah, it's different.
But it's funny. He's been posting a lot with his son on TikTok lately.
Yeah.
And Instagram. But No, I was just curious. I was actually curious about the other, people in the band, because I've got a couple friends. I'm actually trying to get one of them on here, who I met at the gym, who was the lead guitarist for Guns N' Roses.
Oh yeah, you told me about this guy.
Yeah, real cool cat. Yeah. From St. Louis. Nobody knows his name. It's so funny. But he in the guitar circles, a lot of people do, because he just loves playing.
And growing up, the Black Sabbath lead guitarist lived in our neighborhood.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, from St. Louis.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know who he was. I just knew that.
Yeah.
That fact.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool instrumentalists that have come through. I mean, St. Louis has a really cool.
It's a very historical music town.
Well, and
St. Louis blues.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, even musical and even that, just from a talent perspective, there's a lot of talent that's come out of this area, all over different areas. Yeah, he's pointing towards you, by the way.
Oh.
So, but from Olympic athletes, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, obviously, kind of culminating the top of that, to baseball, to football. I mean, we've had.
What's not John Candy, the other actor is from here?
John Goodman.
John Goodman's from here.
Yeah, John Goodman. There's a lot of people. We've had the gal from The Office is from here. There, you look at actors.
High school.
Yeah.
There's
There's a whole slew of actors that have come through from St. Louis or Missouri. You got John Riggles over on the other side, closer to the KC side. So
what's next on your training? You next couple months? Are you just gonna?
I'm just trying to run as much as I can. Just prepare as best I can so I can place as high as possible.
Okay.
So,
are you gonna train outdoors, indoors?
A little combination of both. So the trials are actually in Orlando, Florida, so the February 3rd is when the race is, and the average temperature for February in Orlando is like 75 degrees. So some of the athletes, coaches are a little worried it's going to be warm. So I'm actually doing a little bit of like heat training. And so some of my runs are going to be inside, like layered up, almost like a wrestler type of thing.
Have you ever heard of the masks that you can buy?
Yeah. I've thought about getting one of those. They also recommended because they had this whole all the people who qualified for the trials. There were a bunch of people who were worried, so I had this seminar thing over Zoom about best practices for heat training and dealing with weather. And so one of the things I said was directly after you exercise, if you go into a steam room, that can help further acclimate your body to the heat. So that's one of the things I'm going to start trying. But they were basically it's really the most important 2 or 3 weeks before. So I'm going to start doing that here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, just running as much as I can. I run twice a day most days. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So if you make the Olympic trials, we'll have to have you back to talk about.
Yeah. So you mean the team?
Yeah.
Yeah. So making the team will be a little bit harder because they only take the top 3. Right now I'm ranked 60th out of 220 athletes who qualified. So I'm in the top half, but not, anything can happen.
Yeah. But remember, you didn't have any of the drink stuff prepared for you, and you never ran one before. And
right.
Also, everybody that is on the team now would have had to say what you said.
Exactly. Right? That's true. Yeah.
At some point, they would have said the same thing.
Yeah. It was yeah. Well, and honestly, part of me is just wanting to use this as kind of a stepping stone of okay, maybe I don't get top 3, but maybe I get top 30, top 20, and that would be enough to motivate me for the next cycle 4 years from now. So maybe pick up some sponsors or something like that, just so I can, because right now I'm basically just working full time and doing the running thing for free, but it'd be nice to have a little bit of help. So
you don't know the feeling at all.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, anything else you wanted to say before we wrap this up? Any points of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, just as it relates to running and really just anything in life in general. I mean, you guys know this, but just consistency over long periods of time is what's gonna show you the most benefit. And I know I had times where I wasn't running super consistently, but if I can look back over the last 12, 13 years of my life when I started running, it's it was never this big massive jump from year to year. It was always just chipping away slightly, and then all of a sudden it's wow, I'm here now. This is where I was 10 years ago. It's kind of I don't know who said this, but it's kind of like the proverb of like most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but then underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you're never going to make these massive jumps. It's always just slowly chipping away. So there, any kids out there, especially listening to this, this is kind of my coaching side coming out, but any kids out there, it's like you might not be there yet, but if you stick with it, it's very possible that someday you will be. So
yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Also count the costs.
Yeah.
We're told to, if you build a house, put all the materials aside, and then once you get it all aside, then you start building. So, I mean, knowing that it's going to take 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Just practice.
Yeah.
Keep going. But count the cost. No, it's going to be hard, right? It's not. You wouldn't say it's easy.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
And it's anything in life, whether it's your career, your faith, that's another thing that takes a lot of hard work. It doesn't just happen. Pastor Jerry, I was telling someone this the other day, our old pastor, he would use this analogy when he was talking about spiritual growth. He would say something to the effect of like, everyone knows how to grow spiritually. We know all the things to do. You got to pray. You got to be in the Word. It's like, it's not rocket science. Everyone understands how to do it. It's kind of like losing weight. Everyone knows how to lose weight. What is it? It's you burn more calories than you consume. That's it. That's literally it. It's like the same thing with spiritual growth. Like everyone understands how to do it. The hard part is what? Actually doing it. It's like, so being disciplined, that's something that's super important with everything.
Pastor Jerry always has good wisdom. We love him on here. Yeah. I was actually thinking we need to get him back on here sometime soon. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
So, yep. We love having Pastor Jerry. Well, with that said, thanks for those words of wisdom. Thanks for stopping by today.
Yeah, that's great.
For those listening,
thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we'll keep cheering for you. And for those listening, thanks for listening in on another episode. Don't forget to listen in and help our sponsors. We got Annie McCollum with Resource One at 636-458-1798 for all your financial planning needs. You got Chris at CS Design at 573-436-3717 for all your website, web design type, small business type needs. And then we got Jeff Earhart with State Farm and his agency at 314-821-JEFF or 5333, 314-821-5333. Give those guys a holler. Don't forget Brookes Bible College as well in there. And with that, we'll catch you next episode.
If you own a business and you would like to sponsor Jerod and is running shoes, shirts, whatever,
give him a holler.
Give him a holler.
I'm accepting donations. Thank you.
That's right.
All right. Good plug-in. I love it. All right. We'll catch you next episode.
You're safe.